I remember the fluorescent lights more than anything. They buzzed above me as I blinked awake, my chest aching, my head heavy. The last thing I recalled was collapsing at my desk, the office spinning as everything went black. Now I was in a hospital bed, a nurse adjusting my IV. Don't worry, she said gently. We called your parents. We left messages. They know you're here. For a moment, relief washed over me. My parents would come. They always had to, right? But hours slipped by. Every time the door opened, it was another doctor, another nurse. Never them. Then my phone lit up on the tray beside me. Not a call, not a message of concern, a notification. My sister had tagged me in a photo with friends at a rooftop bar holding a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Best night ever." I stared at the glowing screen, my heart sinking deeper than any physical pain. They knew, they all knew, and still no one came. Not a call from mom, not a word from dad, not even a text saying, "Are you okay?" That was the moment the truth hit me harder than the collapse itself. I wasn't their priority. Maybe I never had been. My name is Rachel Morgan. I'm 32 years old. I've worked myself to the bone in corporate marketing, always believing that if I just achieved enough, my family would finally see me. But lying there under hospital lights, abandoned by the very people I thought I could count on, I realized something chilling. I was on my own. Growing up, I thought my family was unshakable. We weren't rich, but we had Sunday dinners, birthday cakes made from scratch, and the kind of noisy gatherings where everyone talked over one another. I believed that meant love. I believed it meant loyalty. As the eldest daughter, I carried responsibility like a second skin. When my sister forgot her homework, I stayed up late helping her. When my parents needed errands run, I dropped everything to do them. I was the dependable one. Quiet, hardworking, the achiever who never asked for much in return. But it didn't take long to notice the imbalance. My sister was the golden child. She could do no wrong. If she came home late, it was excused. If she failed a test, it was brushed off. Meanwhile, my A's were expected, my achievements downplayed, my needs overlooked. Dad would pat her on the back for trying. But to me, he'd say, "You should have done more." Still, I held on to the belief that family meant support. I told myself they loved me, even if they didn't always show it. I convinced myself their favoritism didn't matter. Because when life got serious, surely they'd be there. I worked hard, not just at school, but later in my career. I pushed myself in ways they never saw, quietly climbing the ladder, building stability, saving every dollar. Yet, at family gatherings, the narrative never changed. I was teased for being too serious, mocked for my boring life, pitied for not being more like my sister, glamorous, social, carefree. I didn't want their money or their gifts. All I wanted was recognition, not dependence, respect. Just the assurance that when I stumbled, they would catch me the way I had always caught them. I didn't know then that the collapse at work would be the moment proving how wrong I was. After that night in the hospital, something inside me shifted. I couldn't unsee the truth. When I needed my parents most, they hadn't come. And my sister? She had been too busy posting pictures of cocktails and neon lights to even check in. But once I noticed that abandonment, I started noticing everything else. At family dinners, the little comments carried sharper edges. My father would look at me and say, "You work too much. And for what?" "You still have nothing to show," my sister would smirk, tossing her hair and add, "She likes playing the martyr, makes her feel important." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But quietly, I was taking note. At first, I told myself I was imagining it, that maybe I was too sensitive. But the pattern was undeniable. Whenever I shared something about my job, my sister found a way to twist it into a joke. If I brought a thoughtful gift, she would sneer, "Oh, Rachel and her budget finds." It stung. Not because I cared about their opinion of my clothes or gifts, but because it proved how little they respected the effort behind them. And yet, while they flaunted their designer bags and weekend getaways, I was doing something different. I was saving, investing, building quiet streams of income, donating to causes that mattered to me. They flashed status for attention. I built security for peace. I stayed silent through their digs, storing every insult like a stone in my pocket. My silence wasn't weakness, it was patience. I let them believe I was fragile, invisible, forgettable. But deep down, I knew the truth. The more they mocked me, the more certain I became that one day the balance would shift. And when it did, they wouldn't see it coming. The second time it happened, I wasn't surprised. I had worked myself into exhaustion again. Long hours, tight deadlines, barely sleeping. One morning, my chest tightened and the world tilted. I woke up in the ER, the same sterile lights glaring down. The doctor asked if anyone from my family was on their way. I shook my head. I already knew the answer. I picked up my phone. No missed calls from my parents, no texts. But there it was again. Another tag from my sister. This time, a boomerang of her raised in a glass at brunch, captioned, "Sunday fun day, no worries in the world." Lying there, IV in my arm, I felt the last thread snap. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't shock. It was a cold, steady realization. I could collapse. I could disappear. And they wouldn't notice until it was convenient for them. That was the moment I knew. My family would never be my safety net. My parents had chosen their silence. My sister had chosen her spotlight. And I had to choose myself. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just stared at the ceiling and whispered, "Never again. I'll never give them the power to break me like this." After that second hospital stay, I made a promise to myself. Never again would I collapse without a plan. Never again would I give my family the satisfaction of thinking I needed them. So I turned my pain into strategy. At work, I stopped saying yes to every extra task just to prove myself. Instead, I started positioning myself for promotion, volunteering for high visibility projects, networking with senior leaders, and finding mentors who believed in me. Every late night became an investment in a career that would carry me further than my family ever imagined. Outside of work, I became meticulous. I cut unnecessary expenses, lived simply, and funneled money into savings and investments. While my sister flaunted handbags and vacations on Instagram, I was buying stocks, building an emergency fund, and laying the foundation for a future that didn't depend on anyone's approval. I also documented everything. Screenshots of my sister's mocking posts, notes from family gatherings where I was belittled, not because I wanted to expose them immediately, but because I wanted a record. Proof that their neglect wasn't just in my head. On the surface, I stayed quiet. I still showed up at dinners, still smiled politely when the jokes landed on me, still let them underestimate me. Their ignorance became my cover. They thought I was fading into the background, but in reality, I was sharpening every tool, building every wall, preparing for the day I would no longer be the invisible one. And that day was coming sooner than they realized. The moment finally came at a family gathering a few months later. My parents were hosting a dinner, the kind where the house buzzed with chatter and my sister floated around like she owned the room. She was showing off pictures from her latest trip, laughing as relatives oohed and ahed. Then, as if on cue, she turned toward me with that familiar smirk. "Rachel," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "still working yourself into the ground? You really should get a life. Nobody remembers who stayed late at the office." The table erupted in laughter. My father shook his head, muttering, "She's right. You work too hard for nothing." I didn't laugh this time. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a slim folder. Inside were clippings, printouts, and an award plaque I'd brought just in case. Without a word, I placed them on the table. Silence fell. My aunt leaned closer, squinting at the front page of a business magazine. My face stared back at her. Beneath the headline, Marketing Executive of the Year, Rising Leader in Corporate Strategy. My sister's smirk dissolved. My father froze, his fork hovering midair. My mother's hand trembled as she set down her glass. I looked at them calmly. I may not have your applause, I said evenly, but I built this myself. And I'll keep building, with or without you. No one laughed this time. The room felt heavy, the air thick with realization. For once, I wasn't the butt of the joke. I was the one holding the power. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to explain further. The truth was staring them in the face, undeniable and permanent. I excused myself, stood tall, and left the table, my silence echoing louder than their laughter ever had. In the days after that dinner, no one called me. No apologies, no explanations, just silence. But it didn't hurt the way it used to. For the first time, their absence felt like freedom, not loss. At work, I kept thriving, promoted again within months. My savings grew, my network expanded, and I poured energy into causes that mattered to me. I realized I didn't need my family's validation. Their silence was proof of who they were, not of my worth. My sister still posted her glossy snapshots online, but now I scrolled past them with indifference. The truth was, I didn't envy her anymore. I pitied her. She had applause, but no substance. Likes, but no loyalty. I had built something real, something lasting, and most importantly, I had built it for myself. What I learned is simple. Blood may tie you, but it doesn't define you. Sometimes the family you think will stand behind you never does. And that's okay. Because strength doesn't come from who shows up when you collapse. It comes from standing back up when no one else will. When I collapsed, they abandoned me. When I rose again, I rose higher than they ever expected. And this time, I wasn't rising for them. I was rising for me. If this story touched you, please give it a like. It truly helps more people hear these messages. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that resilience comes from within, not from the approval of others. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of justice, strength, and survival. Every week, I share journeys of people who've been underestimated, overlooked, or betrayed, and how they rose above it all. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and I'll see you in the next story.